Today I'd like to talk about a very sensitive topic, and it's called divorce. Divorce is something that is extraordinarily challenging for any family, but especially for our children that have autism. Now, I speak from personal experience. And it seems like as a parent, you try to make the very best choices at the time, what you perceive are the best choices. Hi, my name is Jody McNamer. I'm otherwise known as Tyler's father. My son Tyler is an international best-selling author and speaker on the topic of autism. He's published 2 books that have been sold worldwide. He's an absolutely extraordinary individual, and I'm unbelievably proud to be his dad. Today I'd like to talk about a very sensitive topic, and it's called divorce. Divorce is something that is extraordinarily challenging for any family, but especially for our children that have autism. Now, I speak from personal experience. And it seems like as a parent, you try to make the very best choices at the time, what you perceive are the best choices. And in reality, there are choices that you make that maybe are not the best choices. Now, every situation is a little bit different. But what I do know going through divorce is that it has an extraordinary and profound effect on our children that have autism. It has a profound effect on children that are not on the spectrum. But there's some key things that I think it's important that you know as a parent if you're considering separating or changing that household. That's something that I did with Tyler. And there were long standing effects, in fact, effects to that still have repercussions today. If you've read any of Tyler's books, there's actually entire chapters that are devoted to this topic. And as a dad, it was very, very difficult to read those chapters and come to the realization of the reality that I created for Tyler. And so a couple of things that I think is important to realize as a parent is that whatever choices that you make regarding your relationship with your significant other is absolutely going to have an impact on your children. That kind of goes without saying, but there's some unique aspects for those children that have autism. So for Tyler, divorce was unbelievably traumatic, and it was unbelievably traumatic because his routine was greatly interrupted. So there's a huge amount of emotion that's involved, and oftentimes as parents, or at least as fathers, because maybe our children are perceived as being emotionally disconnected, somehow that makes it easier. But the reality of it is that our children with autism actually are as emotionally connected with us as we are with them. They may not be able to express it, or they may not understand how to properly show that type of affection or say words like, I love you, but it is no less emotional, and there's no less emotional impact on you no longer being there as a parent. And it's not only, again, the routine, but it's the emotional aspect of it. And I really didn't get that. And even as Tyler is starting to develop emotions now in his mid-20s, and he's still trying to figure those emotions out, as he figures those out, he goes back because he has a very, very vivid memory, as many of our children with autism have. They can remember things that they've read or seen for years, and far back, as well, early into their childhood, because again, it's just typically the way that their brain is wired. So that's another huge impact, is that they will continue to relive that, and there'll be triggers to relive that, most likely for the balance of their lives. The other thing is as they are emotionally developing, this really then becomes these deep wounds that maybe a typically developing child can work through faster, and by the way, most likely will never work through. But with a child with autism, it typically will take longer. Now, I'm not a marriage counselor, I'm not an expert, I'm not a psychologist, but what I do know is being a parent, one of the things that I think was essential with Tyler, because I chose to divorce, was also making sure that we got Tyler into counseling and made sure that he had a support system. In fact, his counselor that he started seeing when he was very young, 8 years old, is actually still his counselor today. At the time of the taping, Tyler's 26 years old. And I think that that's very, very important to make sure that there's a third party. And even though that Tyler could not speak, he still could actually communicate. So he could communicate in ways of like writing or hand signals or acknowledgement of certain things. So it's very, very important. And again, every situation is different, but it's very, very important that you protect your child with autism, making sure that they also have an outlet too. And again, because maybe there's no or a lack of emotional connection there, like in the case of Tyler, in his entire life, Tyler has told me that he loves me twice, just spontaneously, right? So we talk every morning, and we always go through, and in the evenings as well, we'll say, "Hey, love you," we love you back. But to spontaneously say, "I love you," that was before or after the divorce. And so their brains are just wired a little bit differently. And everybody that has autism all presents differently as well. And that potentially is different for your household as well. But what I do know is that having a child that has unique abilities puts extraordinary stress as well on a relationship. You know, life is challenging enough. And when you have a child that has unique abilities or special types of needs, maybe there's more time that's needed in counseling or working with the school district, or just the emotional challenges that that creates for connection, it does create a huge strain. And the reality of it is that many marriages that have children with unique abilities or special needs do not survive, because you're trying to just take care of all of the emotions and take care of yourself, when in reality, what we haven't done is we haven't actually set up a support system for ourselves either. We haven't put together a support system for our relationships, not only with ourselves, but with others. So that would be another piece of advice, would be is make sure that you do have a support system, that you've created a support system for yourself. It's absolutely essential to do that, because you'll find if you have a support system, an emotional outlet, somebody that you can call, you can rely on, somebody that, whether it be professional or somebody that is a confidant, it's important to be able to have those kinds of releases, not in the context of your relationship, but also individually. You also can create those supports with each other as well, realizing that you all have this common goal, which is to ultimately help our children to just be happy and live productive lives and create some independence. And if we're really focused on that and our love for our children, it will be much less likely that we will be focusing on ourselves, because ultimately it's that focus on self, which, by the way, is very, very important, because we do have to practice self-care. But when we concentrate too much on ourselves and what we need, and those needs aren't getting met, then ultimately we look to fill those needs in other areas. Whereas if we're working ahead of the game and getting those needs met in a way that can continue to be in the context of the relationship, that will help our children. So our children with autism experience emotions. Oftentimes they experience emotions at a greater capacity than actually we do. They just may not show it. It's going to have long-term effects, even for Tyler to this day. He still writes about those things. They still affect him deeply. And this whole topic of leaving and changing the routine, and just even having different routines in different households, are extraordinarily difficult, because it does not matter how similar that you try to make things. Like Tyler's room was exactly the same way as it was at his mom's area, at his mom's house, to the extent that it could be, right? As far as size and paint colors and beds, there's clearly differences there, but we tried to make it as similar. We tried to get together on family rules and values, so that they were similar for Tyler. But irregardless of how much work that you do, the reality of it is the family dynamics are just different. And then when you incorporate stepchildren and or stepbrothers or sisters, that dynamic even then multiplies. There's a lot of confusion, especially when Tyler had to change potentially the way that he behaved in one household versus another household. Transitions are very, very difficult for our children that have autism. So really, really think about those things. If you are considering separation or creating independent households, and again, I'm not a marriage counselor, I'm just sharing simply from my perspective going through that, is had I had to make the decision over again, I don't know if I would have made the same decision or not, because you can't go back and take a look at that. But I do know that I would have considered those things that I had just talked about had I known then what I know now. Because there's an extraordinary amount of pain that goes with that, extraordinary amount of work that I'm still doing with Tyler in order to really build a relationship with him that's meaningful, one that's supportive. And I think that that's just a very, very important. And at all costs, make sure, and that's one of the commitments that I had always made, was that you are 100% involved in their life. Continue to be involved. Whatever has happened between you and your significant other, that is your relationship. It does not break that bond with your child, and it's extraordinarily important that you create and you continue to have that bond. And albeit contextually it's going to be different, but they need that. They desperately need to have a father and a mother. So you got to hang in there. It doesn't matter how desperate the situation may be. You just have to hang in there. It's well worth it. And if you'd ask me that if my son would be an international best-selling author and speaker on the topic of autism when he was young, while I do believe that my child could do anything that he put his mind to, there was just some significant issues that put that into question. So never give up. Never give up. Because our children are absolutely so worth it. They have so much to contribute and so much to give, especially our children that have autism. This world needs those minds. This world needs the way of looking at life that way. So it's your job as a parent to help them bring that to the world, to create the framework of success for them to be able to bring that to the world. And what you'll find is that by being able to work through those relationships personally with your significant other, maintaining the relationship with your child with autism, realizing that they have feelings and emotions just like you, and maybe to a greater degree, realize that they are the most sacred relationships that you can maintain. And my encouragement to you would be, make sure that your needs are being met. Very, very important. But work ahead. Don't let it build up to the point to where you feel that you have to make decisions that really aren't necessarily in your best interest or the best interest of your child. And every situation is different. I have a huge amount of compassion for families and the pressure that they go through. But I would ask that you consider those things as well and really look at what's going to be in the best interest of everyone that's involved.